Straight from the source tonight, the Supreme Court may have granted Donald Trump sweeping immunity protections last month, but he is not off the hook for allegedly attempting to overthrow the 2020 election. This 36-page superseding indictment from special counsel Jack Smith is clearly evidence of that. The special counsel getting a new grand jury to hand up the indictment, one that had not previously heard evidence in this case. Smith's team charging the former president with the exact same charges initially brought against him, though this indictment did have to be reworked to comply with the ruling. Smith specifically makes reference to that. The Supreme Court ruled Trump can claim immunity from prosecution for some of his official actions while in office. So prosecutors have now cut language about Trump's interactions with government officials and added language to describe when he was acting as a candidate and not president. And as you might imagine, Donald Trump is fuming about all of this, claiming it as an attempt to interfere with the 2024 election, while also falsely and baselessly claiming Vice President Harris is actively behind it. And he goes on to accuse her of weaponizing the system against her political opponent, which she is not doing. Joining us now, CNN senior legal analyst Elie Honig and former Nixon White House counsel and CNN contributor John Dean. Elie, to start with you, what are the major differences between this indictment and the previous one? What has been removed and added?
So, Pam, a lot of what's in the new indictment is actually the same as what's in the first indictment. However, the new indictment, we call it a superseding indictment, makes some crucial changes. So first of all, here's what's been removed from the first indictment. First of all, any allegation relating to Donald Trump's efforts to pressure the Justice Department, a central theme of the first indictment was that Trump leaned on DOJ, tried to get them to substantiate his false claims of voter fraud. That is out now. Second of all, some other Trump communications with White House advisors. The Supreme Court had said those are probably immune. Jack Smith has now removed many of them from the case. And third, I found this really interesting. The first indictment refers to Donald Trump as the 45th president of the United States. The new indictment returned today actually does not call him that. All it says is he was a candidate for office. They're not trying to insult him. They're trying to shift the focus from things he did as president to things he did as a candidate in his unofficial capacity. Now, a couple important things have been added to the case. So first of all, there is now explicit mention in the indictment that Donald Trump had no role certifying state elections and he had no role in overseeing presidential electors, because a key part of the case that remains is this false electors scheme. And finally, the new indictment adds an allegation that congressional staffers took the physical paper electoral certificates out of the chamber on January 6th. And that's a response to a separate Supreme Court ruling that said there has to be some element of document fraud or document tampering in order to be obstruction. So I think Jack Smith is trying to now work within that ruling as well.
All right, so John, to bring you in, the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, how much do you think this indictment has been weakened in Jack Smith's case against Trump?
I don't believe it's been weakened at all. In fact, if anything, given the immunity ruling, it's been strengthened. It can go through. Obviously, it's going to be litigated at the district court level, which is the lowest court, before Judge Chutkan, and she's going to decide initially if this works under the very vague, unclear standards set by the Supreme Court. And hopefully, the more explicit and detailed she is, the more likely it will survive and make it back through the Supreme Court, because I'm sure Donald Trump will appeal whatever happens in the next phase of the process.
Right. So the bottom line is this is not going to trial anytime soon, certainly not before the election. But Elie, walk us through what the next steps are here. Will we see Donald Trump go back to plea again?
Yeah, so now they fight it out in court. I'm sure Donald Trump, when he goes into court next week, will say, we still think a lot of the stuff that's in the indictment is immune and should come out. Jack Smith obviously will defend his indictment, and Judge Chutkan has to sort that out. She can either hear from the lawyers in written briefs, or she can hold a hearing, which might look like a mini trial to decide what's in and what's out. And as John said, from there, Donald Trump will have the right to appeal to the Court of Appeals, the Intermediate Court of Appeals, and then potentially the Supreme Court. So 0.0% chance this thing gets tried before the 2024 election.
And John, just yesterday, Jack Smith filed an appeal to bring back the classified documents case. Now he's filing the superseding indictment to save the election interference case. Do you think he's sending a signal here that he's going to keep up the fight?
I think it's very clear he's going to keep up the fight. The Mar-a-Lago documents case, he filed a very aggressive brief. He did not ask for the judge to be removed, although this would if she is overturned, it would be the third strike. And I suspect there's a very strong brief showing that the Judge Cannon had very little basis for tossing the case and dismissing the special prosecutor. There's a long history in the Department of Justice of Attorney Generals appointing special prosecutors. She wants to demolish that. Indeed, she would, if her ruling upheld, all assistant U.S. attorneys would be out of work. So it's a very striking situation down there. And I think Jack Smith is aggressively defending the Department of Justice, his office, and the cases he's filed.
All right, Elie Honig, John Dean, thank you both.